Deception number 2. Abby Honold, the act's namesake, is a proven victim of a brutal rape, torture, and mutilation. This one little sentence sure did stir up some controversy. Well, you know what? I was wrong. Instead, I should have proposed deception number 2 this way. Daniel drill-mellum, the reason behind the Abby Honold Act, is a proven rapist. Keep watching if you want to see my reasoning for this proposed point of deception.
There are many causes of wrongful convictions, a lot of factors that are involved. And I would like to tell you a little bit today about just one of those, and it's the least intuitive, the most counterintuitive of all of the factors involved, and that is the false confession.
Daniel drill-mellum pled guilty and confessed to raping Abby Honold, so that means he is guilty. Case closed, right? Well, in a case where evidence is overwhelming that a crime occurred, it may very well be a legitimate guilty plea. But that's not the case with Daniel. He never confessed to raping Abby Honold during his first police interview. He told a very different and plausible version of what happened. I know this because Abby herself posted a summary of his police statement on her Twitter account for all to see. He told police both of them were at the pregame party, drinking, talking, and kissing. There were people around who saw them. He had 6 to 7 beers, and Abby did not seem overly intoxicated to him. After they made out for a short time, he asked her if she wanted to go to his apartment across the street, and she agreed. She willingly went with him. They went into his bedroom. She gave him a blowjob, then they had sex. And when they were finished, they laid on his bed for 5 minutes before he said, "Hey, let's do that again." Abby said no, and she wanted to go back to the party. He accepts that answer, and she began getting dressed. He said it was apparent to him that she expected him to accompany her back to the party. He declined, and she was mad at his refusal to return with her. So the police investigated for a couple of days and decided to drop the charges against him, finding enough evidence to conclude that Abby Honold had essentially made a false accusation. This evidence included video recording of her approaching the apartment with him and with a smile on her face. One can assume there was also video evidence of her leaving in a huff. She says it was because she was raped. He says it was because she was mad at him for not accompanying her back to the party. Presumably, after sharing such an intimate moment, what else would a girl expect? So far as I see it, Daniel might only be guilty of being a jerk. In a nutshell, this is a she said, he said scenario after 2 people put themselves in an intimate situation like in so many other cases. But Daniel has been painted as a brutal, torturing, mutilating sexual predator. So, back to that so-called confession. It wasn't until a year or so later that Daniel was charged again. This was made possible by Abby's teaming up with a lawyer who provides free advocacy for rape victims by the name of Amy Eisenor. Together, they attempted to reopen her case, but were told that they needed more victims to come forward. So, they found 2 more women Daniel had encounters with previous to Abby. After much cajoling, these women eventually decided to give statements against Daniel. Then, a campus police officer was involved, and he helped rebuild a new, more robust case against Daniel. He was subsequently arrested in an airport while traveling for his sister's wedding. It is documented that Daniel intended to fight the charges, which would mean he intended to plead not guilty. These were serious charges he was facing. Each charge carried something like 20 to 30 years. And if he had multiples, which with multiple accusers he would have, that would mean he'd be in prison for most, if not all, of his life, if a jury were to find him guilty. It is documented that he eventually entered an inpatient sexual behavior treatment program. likely a negotiated condition for lighter sentencing and a guilty plea that the prosecutor would accept. For an innocent person, this program would amount to a brainwashing program. Brainwashing and inquisitory practices are often used by police in interrogations when they want to elicit a false confession. They learn their tactics from the same psychotherapists who elicit so-called repressed memories from vulnerable people who go see them for depression or addiction issues. This is something his lawyer and family likely all encouraged him to do, understandably, so that he could have a shot at life once he was freed. It looks good on paper, satisfies the prosecutors, and would afford him way more lenient sentencing should he agree to plead guilty. This was his only way out. And that's exactly what happened. He pled guilty, wrote an apology, which sounds more like an apology for being a jerk rather than admitting to being a rapist, and got 6 years instead of the possible 60 to 90 years. So what do you think? Did Daniel plead guilty because him and his family saw it as the only alternative to spending life in prison? Let me know in the comments below. I'll leave you more from Rob Warden on false confessions and wrongful convictions. And I'll leave links below in the description bar for you to follow for more on the reported details of this case. If you find this video valuable and thought-provoking, subscribe to my channel and get notifications for more videos and live streams.
I can't imagine that I'd ever confess to a crime I didn't commit, and I would imagine that you can't imagine that you would either. And yet we know that this happens with some frequency, alarming frequency, if not ubiquity, in the criminal justice system. Over the years, I've made something of a study of this phenomena of false confessions. And here in Cook County, since Lavelle's case, there have been 70 documented wrongful convictions. And of those, 23, nearly more than 1 in 3, involved a false confession. So as you can see, it's a quite serious problem, no matter how counterintuitive it may be. Now, false confessions come in various types, and 3 of those types are the cases that I call brainwashing. And that is that the police can convince you that you must have committed this crime and blacked it out of your memory because this is something so horrible and it was so out of character. And this, by the way, is a very common phenomenon, the police will tell you. Self-protective amnesia happens all the time when people do things like this. And then finally you allow, well, I guess that's possible. You've got all of this evidence. And of course, they're lying about that. And then they say, maybe it would be helpful if you would simply start hypothetically speculating on how you might have done it. And well, okay, well, I guess I would have strangled her or something like that. Well, it turns out she was stabbed, but that doesn't matter. It's still a confession, and you will be convicted based on that. Then there are others that we've seen that are really given in desperation. That is that the police have worn the suspect down after hours and hours and hours of questioning until you're willing to say anything just to stop the questioning. And then another category is the inquisitory style, where you're making a choice between one scenario and another, and you literally become convinced that it is in your self-interest to confess to a crime that you didn't commit and minimize your culpability.